our claim. And I use the term contested very guardedly because um, as far as the Malaysian government is concerned, our legal position is that in terms of the disputes in the South China Sea, China is not our biggest problem. Our biggest problem is another member state of ASEAN, uh, whose uh, whose repeated intrusions into our waters, including in undisputed waters, happens very regularly. We don't see a build-up of features in Malaysian waters, which is different from this ASEAN member states. But again, just as we don't publicize our differences with this particular ASEAN member states, because we know that were we to do it, it will open up an entire can of worms, which will affect the entire effort at community building within Southeast Asia, which is of primary importance to equally in that respect. Obviously, China is a big and powerful country, but nonetheless, as a matter of principle, this is what we do. The next point is um, the reality, a recognition of a reality that we have to deal with the world in the way that we know how it is, not in the way that we think it should be. And from this logic emanates very many things. For example, the rule of law. Obviously, we must all respect the rule of law. And yesterday, during the executive secretary's speech on behalf of the president, um, sorry, there was an earlier speech, I believe, where it was portrayed all the leaders of all countries giving their commitment to their devotion. But as we know, that there are problems, there are limitations to the UNCLOS. And I spent 16 years doing multilateral work. So I know its limitations. And one of the limitations is that consensus is found not when people are equally happy, but when people are equally unhappy. And this is the reality. So it is necessarily a very imperfect instrument. So although the rule of law is paramount, realistically, it cannot be the be all and end all. There is another part of the equation as well, in addition to the rule of law, and it's called relationships. The implementation of the rule of law and the goals to which we have rules of law must be also, as a corollary, have relationships. You must build relationships in addition to strengthening the rule of law and in order to strengthen the rule of law. And once you lose that, then you slip down a very slippery slope. And this is the reality. Practical cooperation is obviously incredibly important. And practical cooperation means exactly that. Looking at it, I always say to my community advisors, I trust everybody. I trust everybody. I trust everybody to act in their national interest. So the trick is, what is their national interest? And you have to have very frank conversations. To the extent that national interests are aligned, then you should work together. But to the extent that's point that I made, must take into account the reality that we have to take the world in the way that we know how it is, not in the way that we think it should be. And we have very different perceptions, we have very different realities. For example, Malaysia has a bit of an advantage because amongst all of the claimant states, we are the only one which sits abuts both the Straits of Malacca and the South China Sea. So it gives us a bit of strategic space.
Now let's go to the National Security Coordinator of the Republic of Palau, the Honorable Jennifer Anson, for her remarks.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. Um, Republic of Palau, it's a Pacific island. So you may wonder, well, we're here talking about South China Sea. Why is Palau here? Well, I just want to say that I'm so grateful to have been invited here because, yes, Palau is a Pacific island. It's the westernmost island nation in the Pacific. And I believe that because of our location in the world, that we face more similar issues and challenges, um, more similar to our neighbors, Philippines to the west and Indonesia to the south, more similar than our Pacific Island brothers and sisters to the east. Pacific Islands, in their Bowie Declaration, the number one security threat is climate change. But for Palau, as laid out in our 2022 National Security Strategy, our number one threat is economic security. And this came about 2022 when the National Security Strategy was written. We were coming out of COVID. We had zero tourism. We relied on tourism. We also relied on fishing. In 2020, we closed 80% of our EEZ to commercial fishing. So all at once, we lost tourism and we lost fishing. We had zero, we had zero income into Palau. So we were facing economic security threats. How do we survive without our top two secure economic drivers? So what happened? We went into debt. You had to take out loans, and then you have your threats of, um, uh, you know, now you're taking out loans. How are you going to pay them back? But anyway, I digress. So back to Palau. Um, I believe that because of where we are in the world, we are just on the other side of the Philippines. We share a border with the Philippines. The South China Sea is just on the other side. It's only a matter of time before what's happening in the South China Sea is going to spread into the East Philippine Sea. And Palau is there. And Palau is very small. We have a population of roughly 20,000. Our maritime police force, 50. 50 Marine police officers to manage 2 patrol vessels for our entire 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone. So cooperation is the key. And cooperation with our nearest neighbors, which is the Philippines, hasn't happened. And I believe that this is a starting point. And I'm so happy that I'm here because I'm able to this I think it's time to follow through because the threat is there. People ask me, what keeps you up at night? China. China keeps me up at night in the daytime. It's always on my mind because they're there. They're in Palau. It's not a matter of keeping the threats out. The threats are already there. How do we mitigate those threats that are already there in Palau? Cooperation. So just a little bit of history with the National Security Coordination Office. It's a very young office. It was only established during President Vips's first administration in 2021. Prior to that, we had no National Security Office. National security matters were managed by either a Ministry of State or the Ministry of Justice. But because we saw the need and we were witnessing the threat growing, President Whips had the foresight to say we need to have a national security office in Palau. Now, Palau is also a very young country, only gaining independence in 1994. And Palau is also one of the three remaining Pacific islands who still have diplomatic relations with Taiwan. So that's another big challenge for us. The pressure is there. Every day, it's the pressure from China. What are you doing? You're breaking the law. Taiwan, we heard it in the panel earlier. Taiwan is a province of China. Why are you recognizing this province as an independent country? You're breaking the law. So the pressure is there. We need to do what we can to stand up to the big countries that are pressuring us, but we can only do that through cooperation, through partnerships with like-minded countries, such as yourselves here. So, with that said, I want to also emphasize that even though Palau is small country, we are an independent country and we have a voice at the United Nations. So we want to have a voice also in this region. And we want to say we're standing up, we're promoting a free and open spaced Indo-Pacific, and we will do what we have to stand up to those who feel differently, who want to intrude into our sovereign waters, who want to stake claims where we have already staked our claim. We have to stand up. And it's only through cooperation, partnerships, that we can succeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Anson. Now, of course, last but not least, let's welcome the Ambassador of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam to the Philippines, His Excellency Lai Tai Binh.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and dear co-chair, dear the chair, Abin Zainal Abidin, Director General of the National Security Council of Malaysia, the Honorable Jennifer Anson, National Security Coordinator of the Republic of Palau, Excellencies, esteemed college, experts and friends. Thank you so much for letting me speak today after listening to very meaning. I'd like to extend my sincere gratitude to the organizers, the West Philippine Sea United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. As a coastal state and a responsible member of the international community, Vietnam has consistently advocated for these norms to prevent escalation and build trust among nations. In recent years, Vietnam has faced significant no allowance of foreign military bases on our soil, no reliance on one country to counter another, and no use of threat of force. And this non-aligned stance has allowed us to bolster our position to diplomatic hedging and practical actions. For instance, recently we also expanded our marine protected areas to safeguard biodiversity and combat illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, efforts that contribute to the regional sustainability and align with UNCLOS provisions on environmental protection. We have also conducted joint patrol with China in the Gulf of Tonkin, demonstrating that dialogue can de-escalate tensions even amid disputes. Our contribution extends to regional and multilateral frameworks as well. We are going to ratify the Maritime Boundary Agreement with Indonesia soon, a milestone that resolves long-standing overlaps and set a precedent for peaceful negotiations. Within ASEAN, we actively support the swift conclusion of a substantive, effective code of conduct in the South China Sea. emphasizing binding mechanism to manage incidents and reduce risks. And as a member of the ASEAN Coast Guard Forum, Vietnam has pushed for enhanced cooperation in joint patrols, information sharing, and capacity building, area that will be further explored in tomorrow's special lunch roundtable. This initiative not only strengthen maritime domain awareness, but also counter malign influences, such as disinformation campaign that distort narratives and undermine regional unity. Vietnam's partnership with the Philippines exemplify our commitment to collaborative security. In our joint statement on strategic partnership, we reaffirm our dedication to handling the South China Sea differences constructively without force and in full compliance with international law. Vietnam fully supports the Philippines' upcoming ASEAN Chairmanship in 2026, viewing it as an opportunity to elevate maritime security on regional agenda. And I'd like also to echo what Honorable Anson just said. Cooperation is the key. For Palau, for example, when I traveled to Palau, talked with the president and a lot of other people in Palau, I was surprised to see that the most of the rice that you consume in Palau is from Vietnam, but you buy it from America. So the rice have to travel a long way from Vietnam to America and then Palau. So I think that with better connection between regional countries, you can have, better rice directly from Vietnam. So maritime connection is really important. And nowadays, I think that I talk with a lot of people in Palau, and they also told me about you are very worried about the marine plastic wastes. And some people told me that some of the marine plastic wastes in Palau may come from ASEAN countries or vice versa. So we do care about a common destiny if we have to and we have to take a lot of action in order to prevent, such non-traditional security challenge. And when I visited a coral reef research project in Palau, funded by an organization in from UK, I also found out that Vietnam or other countries in the region also have the similar demand. And I think that we can work together with a lot of things, including such marine scientific research, in order to contribute to the future and our cooperation. And actually, challenges persist. Vietnam has protested activities that infringe on our sovereignty, such as those at Syndicate, and urging all parties to exercise restraint and avoid action that complicate the situation. We call for greater transparency to counter disinformation and malign operations, as discussed in earlier session today. And looking ahead, Vietnam proposes deepened cooperation in several areas, like the joint scientific research on marine ecosystem, shared maritime domain awareness platforms, and coordinated responses to non-traditional threats like climate change and IUU fishing. We also encourage extra-regional partners to align their support with ASEAN centrality, providing technology and training without exacerbating divisions. So in closing, Vietnam stands ready to work with the Philippines, Malaysia, Palau, and all other nations to transform the South China Sea from a zone of contention into one of cooperation. By prioritizing law over force, dialogue over coercion, and shared prosperity over unilateral gains, we can secure a stable Indo-Pacific for future generations. Let us seize this moment to build bridges, not barriers. Thank you so much, and to our discussion and the networking resume ahead. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat, Your Excellency. May I now invite all our esteemed speakers to please take their seats. Your names are there, I believe, and I'll be joining you. I'd If you will allow me, I'd like to ask the first question of the lady who is always sleepless at night. I don't think you put it that way, but what keeps you up at night is the presence of China. Do you feel that this is the that you're being pressured to drop your relations with Taiwan? Like, do we have other microphones for everyone? Okay, please.
Okay. Yes, I feel that way because it is happening. Um, when President Whips was first elected in 2021, he received a phone call from the Chinese ambassador in the Federated States of Micronesia, and that was the first thing that came up was, "What are you doing? It's time to switch to China. China can fill all your hotel rooms and build more resorts and give Palau everything it needs. The sky's the limit. So let's go. Let's forget about Taiwan. They're only a province. It's time to do what the whole world is doing and recognize that China is the way to go."
And do you have any other options? I mean, you're standing firm in keeping relations with Taiwan.
Oh, of course, the option is there. And this president is standing up and saying, no, we have a relationship with Taiwan. Taiwan is a big supporter of Palau and our development. But is not going to be the president forever. Will the next president feel the same? We don't know. We'll see what happens in 2028.
And if I may direct the next question in relation to the remarks given by Ms. Anson, that's a big oversight, Secretary, not having any cooperation with Palau right next door to us. Any overtures, any future plans? We seem to be looking to only the powerful nations, if I may say so.
Well, actually, no. In fact, President Rips visited the country last February 2025, and they have agreed on three MOUs that we are actually following up. And yesterday, we had a very productive meeting, and we discussed about the situation in Palau. And we took note that what China has been doing in the South China Sea, the same recipe or formula, is now happening in the waters of Palau.
Is there also political interference aside from, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Ms. Anderson? Yes. Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes.
I'll,
And we agree that we can see the similarity, the trend. Uh, you can see now maritime research vessels in the waters of Palau, and then Chinese militias. They've already named two features in Palau waters, and soon I think China will have a contrivance of historical narratives that Palau belongs to China maybe 4,000 years earlier or 3,000.
maybe the Philippines can make that claim too. No, I'm sorry. But okay, so it's the same playbook.
Yes. And that's why we also emphasize in our discussion that, yes, I agree, cooperation, bilateral cooperation, minilateral and multilateral cooperation, because this is where Palau can leverage and reduce the gaps and the weaknesses. A small country like Palau needs partners like United States, Japan, Australia, not to fight against China, but to ensure that the rule of law is respected and their sovereignty is actually protected too. And well, it's really time now that we work with neighboring countries. And as I've said, I'm going to follow up uh, all the things that were built upon by the two presidents last February, and there will be closer collaboration and cooperation between the Philippines and Palau.
Good to know, Secretary Anya. Thank you. Now, I'd like to ask everyone, And perhaps we can start with Datu. Um, what to you, because you said that you don't publicize incursions into your territory, you'd rather deal with it quietly, which is the direct opposite, I would say, of the Transparency Initiative of the Philippines. But what to your countries is the ultimate red line in terms of establishing a free, open, and rules based maritime order?
Well, um, if if the if the if the implication in your question is that what is an activity by China beyond which we will need to take more aggressive action towards us, or more assertive action towards from what we're doing now in terms of freedom of navigation. As I mentioned, we all have a very different type of relationship with China. It's all very complex. Uh, at least as far as we're concerned, um, these incidents are very few and far between. Freedom of navigation in our waters continue to be unimpeded. Certainly, um, not to a level which is of great detriment in both practical as well as strategic terms. But being quiet doesn't mean being quiet all of the time. No, I again, our approach is, from a more philosophical level, is that you always owe to your friends the truth, and friendship must be strong enough for both sides to communicate the truth, which we do with the Chinese, and the Chinese do with us as well. But I think in the way in which we communicate the truth must be framed by a solid basis, a solid understanding of where we are in terms of our relationships, in terms of how we view one another. I'll be very specific. In Malaysia's case, we always take pains not to portray our differences with China, and indeed with all of the other claimant states in the South China Sea, which have a dispute with Malaysia. We never say that it is a problem. We say that it is a common challenge which we need to address. If you say then it is a problem, then you go down a very slippery slope, because you're not framing it in terms of something which we can resolve together. You see, so how you frame it is equally important as well. But when you talk about the issue of red lines, um, I think it's also very important that you take into account the state of overall bilateral relations. And I can say very frankly, in my experiences, years of experience dealing with China, that you cannot have a better precedent for Malaysia-China bilateral relations than Xi Jinping. This is not an assessment which other countries will share, obviously, but I can only speak from Malaysia's own experience. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think that for Vietnam and of course maybe all other countries, the red line would be national security and sovereignty. And but I think that in international relations, when we talk about the red lines, things seem to be very complicated. And it's not so easy that we should do this or should do that under certain circumstances. I think that for Vietnam and other countries as well, we when we do something, we not only look at national security and sovereignty, but also we have to consider a lot of factors, such as the uh, relationship with other countries, especially the neighboring countries. Very, very important. We have to take into consideration the ASEAN consensus and centrality, international community benefits, and of course, international law. So it seems to be it should be a combination of a lot of factors. So, and I remember that some national security advisor in the past also said that sometimes national interest is a very tricky term. So it depends a lot on, each countries at different time. Yeah, I think that we don't have a general answer to the question. Yeah. Okay.
So I think the approach that we take in Palau is because we're so small and there's little that we can do, we want to publicize things. So in uh, prior to 2015, we had a big problem with Vietnamese blue boats illegally fishing in our waters. So what we did in 2015 is we took three of the blue boats, we took them out to sea, and we burned them, and we put the video on YouTube. The video is still there. And since that incident, we have had zero Vietnamese blue boats coming into Palau's waters. Now, Vietnam listened. We tried to do the same with China. We haven't burned their boats yet. I see Ray over here likes to post on X incursions into our EZ. We even send, but the response is always, oh, we were just avoiding the storm. Don't worry about us. Uh, there's nothing to see here. Carry on. We even, and it's not innocent passage. It's not just it's loitering, doing things in our EZ, particularly over our fiber optic cable. So when we send the planes to go make contact, we say, uh,
So you see this incidents escalating.
yes.
Yes. Um, kidding. Secretary Anyo.
Well, well, I would say that China, we still do have a lot of engagements with China, but this is really affecting or straining the relationship because, as they say, it's very hard to shake the hands of a person if he's stepping your foot. So, for example, I will narrate to you the data just for 2025 third quarter report of the National Maritime Council. A total of 78 illegal, coercive, aggressive, and firing water cannon, laying of nets, shadowing 37 times, shadowing, well, not to include malign influence.
Actually, I don't have the specific information on the infrastructure building right now, but uh, in principle, we pay a lot of attention to the environmental protection. So I strongly believe that on the infrastructure construction is for protecting our sovereignty and for protecting the environment. And as I said, it also have to enhance the IOU fishing issue in order, and we are doing all of those things only in accordance with the international law. Yes.
They have no military
No,
capability.
no, not
built on it.
militarization. Yeah.
Would Dato like to react to the building, the infrastructure building that Vietnam is undertaking in some of the territories in the South China Sea?
Well, back to the point that I just made. We don't publicize these things. We have communicated our position very clearly to the Vietnamese, and I'll just stop at that.
Thank you. Secretary Anya.
Yes, we are aware of that. And in fact, our concern is the effect on the environment. But somehow we find ways on how we communicate and cooperate and make sure that these efforts shall be for positive results. We are calling out because, as I said, we are very concerned on environmental degradation that will be the result of such island building. And it's good to note that it's not to be used as a military base. Unlike Mischief Reef, uh, Perry Cross, and Subi Reef, it's now a full-fledged military and missile bases that threaten the countries within the first island chain. And this is actually a gross violation of the Declaration of Tanda because it says there that we have to rule out the use of force. Building a military base there is not for humanity or for kindness. It's for military uses, for use of force. And we condemn that.
Thank you, Secretary Ano. Okay, I saw you first. Sir, may question ka? Okay, after the lady here, may I have your name?
Yes, thank you. My name is Dr. Natalie Samby from Verve Research in Australia. My question is for Madam Amazon. Next year in 2026, Palau will host the Pacific Islands Forum. How will Palau advocate for its Pacific Island fellow members to care about the West Philippine Sea? How will you convince your fellow PIF members who have abandoned diplomatic support of Taiwan that the rights of island state is more important than money?
All right.
That sounds like a good question for the president. But if you have heard the president, our president whips over the years, he is very open about his stance. He does try to talk to our Pacific Island neighbors, but of course, we cannot push our agenda on other countries, just like they cannot push their agenda on us. So what we can do is just advocate for, rules based, free and open Indo-Pacific. We're a democracy, and we value human life and human rights and doing the right thing. So we can be a good example to our neighbors. Um, Obviously, they will do what drives them. And we've seen that recently, most recently with Nauru switching ties, and before that was Solomon Islands and Kiribati. And just because they switch ties to China doesn't mean they cannot switch back to Taiwan. I guess it's just a matter of them seeing prioritizing what's best for them and who best would be a partner for them for their economic development.
If you didn't want to advocate this on the basis of making them choose, if you had to advocate this on the basis of the rights of island states and the rights of international law, which is essential for small states, what would your bottom line key message be at the Pacific Island Forum?
Thank you.
Yeah, so the bottom line is what's in the best interest of the people, because it's different for every island. And you can see that based on, what's coming. For the Solomon Islands, they were about to host, the Pacific Games. So they needed infrastructure support. And China really helped Solomon Islands building their sports facilities to help them prepare for the games. Um, so it's prioritizing what's best for the people at that time and then going with that.
Thank you, Madam Anson. I will have to give in to the spokesperson of the Philippine Coast Guard, and you will be number 3, sir.
Thank you. The Philippines is a believer of the international law. We have so much strong faith with international law that it is an equalizer of all nations, whether you are big and small. During the speech of the National Security Advisor of Malaysia, you mentioned that it's, in making decision making, in the West in your relationship with China, you would choose to make things accept things as they are instead of the things that you want it to be. Um, Therefore, my question is, are we going to tolerate unlawful behavior, violations of UNCLOS for the People's Republic of China? Because that's something that you cannot change. And secondly, I would like to comment on with what you said about the transparency of opening a can of worms. For the Philippine government, transparency is exposing unlawful activities. If you would choose to be silent, you're just going to allow the bully countries to be emboldened and not to be held accountable. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commodore Tariela.
Thank you. On second point first, China's not bullying us. Like I said, all of our relations with the Chinese is very complicated. But that is not our experience. That's the first point. Second point, like I said, the, we have to accept that the rule of law in international relations is very different from the rule of law in domestic constituencies, municipal law. It is an equalizer, obviously. It is obviously um, um, a firm guardrail and a threshold and an indication of an aspiration of the international community. But an argument can be made. You have Israel, genocide against the Palestinians. Nobody goes on and on about it. It's incredibly imperfect, and we live in an incredibly imperfect world. And that's how it is. And we have to navigate and to position ourselves, to situate ourselves in the way that serves our national interest. And at the end of the day, the reality is, and I'm not the first person to say this, geopolitics is a very cruel game. It's probably the cruelest game out there. And frankly, as again, and I'm not saying this, those who are not at the table are on the table. And this is the reality, whether you like it or not. There are some people, I'm sure, who believe that the sky should be green, but it's not. It's blue. And you have to accept it.
Accept that somebody says it's green. You mean? Sorry. No more. We have so many questions. The gentleman over here.
Thank you, yeah, Madam Chair. Well, Wu Zichun from China. Thank you very much. Commentary and questions. I think it's improper to talk about the Taiwan issue in this multiple dialogue on the structural issue. Jennifer just mentioned the relationship between Parallel and Taiwan from Chinese perspective. You know, there is only one China in the world. No one China, one Taiwan. Taiwan is only a province of China. So your relationship from our Chinese view is the sister relationship at the provincial level. So to be honest, and to Ambassador from Vietnamese, despite we enjoy our good relationship between our two countries. Okay. Questions. I will give you a number with regard to the reclamation. Your question. I add your question to that. Question. So, land reclamation by Vietnam. What would be implication for the structural peace and stability and the COC consultation, negotiation, and the deals implementation if Vietnamese continue land reclamation and followed by construction of a runway and facilities? As a question to Ambassador. And also commentary to use the channel.
Three questions. Three questions. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Actually, I mentioned it before that the Vietnam is a responsible nation, not only to the region, but also to the international community. So we are doing everything to protect not only our sovereignty, but also to contribute to the stability of the region and in accordance with international law, including the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea.
Thank you, Ambassador. I think the gentleman over there, and I missed you. Okay, you'll be number 5, 6. Taiwan, number 6. Wait first. Yeah. My God, I feel like I'm a referee.
Can I provide clarification on Vietnam IU fishing and land and constructions? I'm Mr. Vũ Hải Đăng from Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam. And can I? Clarification. Okay. 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 First, relating to the constructions of Vietnam on the Spratlys, I can provide you the numbers and the construction. You have been built 9 lighthouses, 4 schools, and 9 pagodas on the Spratly Islands. And our government will stop at nothing to improve the life of our residents in the Spratly, which is our territory. We have the first building that we did was in 15th century. It was a temple. And we continue to build on the Spratlys. And I hope that we will build more schools on the Spratly to serve our children, because now it's only primary schools. So when they reach teenagers, they have to go back to the mainland to study, separated from their parents. So I hope that I'm not so sure. It's a few thousand. Are you fishing? Can I clarify? Okay. So the Vietnamese government takes the IU fishing issues very seriously. First, we have criminalized on the owners of the vessel who did violating other countries' waters to fish. For example, now if a fishing vessel owner that have fishing vessels fishing in other countries' waters, there can be a penalty of 1 trillion Vietnamese dong, which is equal to $60,000. My salary is about 10 million Vietnamese dong, which is $500 per month. So $500 per month. So 60,000. You can imagine how big is that.
Okay.
So that's it. Thank you.
I was waiting for the question. Sir, this is a question.
Yes, so I'm Sasha Chabra from the Institute for National Defense and Security Research in Taiwan. So my question is inspired by this very interesting comment Mr. Abedin has made that, in your relations with China, South China Sea only accounts for about 5%. So your focus is more on getting rich, which we all sympathize with for sure. What I'm wondering is it 5%? Because maybe for the Filipinos, it's 90%, right? And if the Filipinos are unable to defend their sovereignty in the West Philippine Sea, maybe for Malaysia, it might become 50%. And then, Mr. Xi Jinping might not be as friendly as he is to you, right? And I wonder this because I'm based in Taiwan, and when I engage in third countries, I often hear this paradigm set to me that the Taiwan question is something between the Chinese and the Taiwanese, or the Chinese and the Americans, as perhaps our friend will say. But except in one exception, which is in Japan, and the Japanese recognize that a Taiwan contingency is a Japan contingency because they recognize if Taiwan falls, they cannot have effective defense of their territory. The economic security will collapse in North Asia. So I wonder, can we think there's a similar paradigm in the West Philippine Sea, where if we cannot secure the South China Sea for all claimant parties and protect Filipino sovereignty, is perhaps a Filipino contingency, an ASEAN contingency, in fact? Thank you.
It's an imperfect world. We have imperfect information. And these are legitimate concerns. It's certainly that we're not brushing under the carpet. Obviously, this can happen. Many other things can happen as well. So the thing is to strike a balance between what you know right now and the possibility of that happening. And like I said, or I rather implied, it's not something which we think will happen. Certainly not to the level that we need to be more assertive in terms of our approach to China. Now, you may think that I'm being completely cynical about this, about our approach to China. But if you think about it, the imposition of the new tariffs by the US is also breaking international trade law, and we accept it. I mean, we don't like it, obviously, but we have negotiated with the Americans, and I think we've negotiated with Americans relatively well as compared to what the alternative could be. So that's how it is.
Secretary Anyo.
Well, thank you, and thank you for your question. Well, I agree, and well, just like Taiwan, whatever happens to Taiwan, if there is let's say, a use of force to unify Taiwan, well, our position is the status quo and no use of force because Taiwan is very proximate to us and we have around 180,000 Filipinos in Taiwan. And the proximity is, well, there's a joke that you can hear the cock crows in the morning from Batanes to the nearest island from Taiwan. And I think this is a collective effort of adhering to the rule of law, defending the sovereignty of countries, respecting its sovereignty, big or small, leveraging with the rule of law. And maybe what we wanted for China to do is, well, first, stop the aggressive coercive action. A solution to this dispute may take longer, maybe not within our generations. But what we wanted is to have a set of rules to govern, manage dispute, and avoid escalation that might lead to shooting war. So that is why we are pushing for the conclusion of the code of conduct. And maybe with that we can get the support of the inter-ASEAN member states and international and regional partners. This will not solve the dispute, but it would guarantee that there will be no escalation and it is better to talk when there is no coercion. We can have we cannot have cooperation if there is coercion. And so that is what we want that to happen, making our neighbors aware that an aggression towards the Philippines or to Palau or to Taiwan or to any country is similar like an attack also to another country. Maybe not now, but in the future, because we might be emboldening China to do more aggression just to, well, comply to its national rejuvenation of annexing the South China Sea. And we cannot separate South China Sea with Indo-Pacific, as what has been observed by Honorable Jennifer. So, and not only Palau, I think many Pacific states and in South Asia are already feeling the same. And again, this is not a call for a fight against China, just for the rule of law, the rule-based international order.
Thank you, Secretary Anyo. The gentleman here, and then I'll turn to that side. Okay.
Thank you. My name is Christian. I'm from Indonesia. My question goes to my first question to ASEAN colleagues. I would like to echo Ambassador Pin about the maritime boundary agreement between Indonesia and Vietnam. Hopefully, it will be ratified very soon. And I was just wondering, what are the prospects of intra-ASEAN maritime boundary dispute settlement between Vietnam and Philippines, and also between Malaysia and Indonesia in the South China Sea? I think there is more progress with that because we all believe in UNCLOS as the basis for negotiations. Second question, if I may, is about ASEAN Pacific Island Forum MOU, which was signed 2 years ago. Perhaps you can enlighten us what can ASEAN contribute to maritime security capacity building in the Pacific Islands, including to Palau, and for Madam Anson as well. What do you think Palau what is Palau expectations from this MOU with ASEAN? Thank you.
So, as I said, Vietnam and the Philippines enjoy a lot of conversation between our two countries, and we share a lot of things together. And like with other ASEAN nations, we discuss a lot of issues of mutual concern, and and yeah, I hope that we also have advancement in specific areas in accordance with the principle of ASEAN consensus and centrality as well as international law.
Thank you, Ambassador. DG Abidin.
Thank you. I think it's publicly well-known information that the Prime Minister Anwar and President Prabowo have a very special relationship, dating back very many years. And I think there is now an earnest effort by both leadership and therefore both governments to make substantive progress in terms of the delimitation of the maritime boundaries. But not only that, I think in the Sulu Sea, we're thinking very seriously about how to operationalize joint development very quickly as well. Thank you.
So speaking for Palau and how we can work together with ASEAN countries on maritime security, I think that having joint exercises, joint patrols, even shipwrighter agreements with the other ASEAN countries would really help Palau because we don't have the capacity. So currently we have a shipwrighter agreement with the United States Coast Guard as well as the Taiwan Coast Guard, but I think expanding that to other ASEAN countries would really benefit Palau.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Well, for the Philippines, well, fortunately also that the Philippines is assuming the ASEAN chairmanship for 2026. And our key priorities is enhancing maritime cooperation, not only among ASEAN states, but with international and regional partners, strengthening peace and stability, managing transboundary and transnational issues like piracy, illegal drugs, terrorism, and we will build upon the gains that was attained during the chairmanship of Malaysia. And regarding resolving this transnational limitations of boundary, we have been working already with the ASEAN countries, particularly with Vietnam. There's already a technical working group studying for the joint submission for the extended continental shelf. And we do welcome maritime cooperation with Palau. In fact, that is the meat of our meeting yesterday. Uh, because the Philippines and Palau, the distance is actually less than 400 nautical miles. And I found a trivia which I will share. In the 17th century, Palau and the Philippines had been ruled by the Spanish East Indies, and they're being ruled from Manila. So it was only in 1899, after the Treaty of Paris, that Philippines and Palau were separated, and they were into the care of the German nation. So, in other words, there are a lot of commonalities between Palau and Philippines, and this is the start of closer cooperation with Palau.
Thank you. This gentleman here has a question.
Thank you very much. Hunter Marston, I'm an adjunct fellow with the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington. I have a question for the Vietnamese ambassador. Vietnam is in a very interesting position, as others have noted, despite Vietnam's own island building activities and despite tensions with China in the past. And amidst Vietnamese dialogue and agreements with other ASEAN disputants of the South China Sea, China has done very little to call out Vietnam's own island building activities, and actually Vietnam-China relations are quite stable for the time being. How are we to understand this relatively positive position that Hanoi finds itself in, and what would it take for that position to change? Thank you.
Um,
I think that such questions are very interesting, but and we have similar questions, on the issue from many different people. But in short, I think that uh, as I said, Vietnam is doing everything, in accordance with international law, and we uh, choose conversation, uh, over competition or confrontation. And we had a lot of dialogues with not only ASEAN countries, also with China, our very important neighboring country. And as my colleague from Vietnam just mentioned, we did a lot of things in the South China Sea in order to protect our citizens, in order to protect our environment, especially after the COVID-19 when we had a lot of problems at seas. And it is not only for Vietnam; it's a common problem for Vietnam, also for the other countries in the region for the regulation of the environmental system. And we never have the intention to militarize our infrastructure in the South China Seas. Yeah, so I think maybe that's one answer from my perspective.
Okay, it's a round table dialogue, and so I will allow this comment from this lady here. Make it short.
Thank you very much. My name is Hương from the Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam, and today I'm very enjoy the thoughtful presentation remarks by the panel. I just share some comment related to Palau remarks. I think that Palau is a good example because you are a small island, but you know to use faithful the international law when Palau knows to have the grouping with the other small island, with commissions of the small island, and you know how to bring and submit the case on the climate change and obligations of the states in respect of climate change. And last year, the International Tribunal of Law of the Sea had the landmark advisory opinion on that case. So I think because now I know that Palau now is one of the stakeholder in the Indo-Pacific, so I think that in the future, maybe this a good example, and Palau can share perspective with the other ASEAN countries to know how to use international law in the good faith and how ASEAN could find look for a legal question, bring to the ITLOS or the ICJ to answer one legal question related to the South China Sea. Just one might comment and just very based on international law and the rule of law. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would you like to react, Miss Anson? All right, sir.
Thank you very much. My name is Narushige Michita. I teach International Security Affairs at the National Graduate Institute for Policy Studies in Tokyo. So fundamentally, what we would like to see is China deciding to take a more cooperative path. Unfortunately, Mr. Xi Jinping is failing to make China a great and respected nation. So my question is, one, how do you see the likelihood of China deciding to take a more cooperative path going forward? And second, related to that, what should we be doing to encourage China to make such a decision in the long run?
Oops. Sir, the mic is there beside you and then down the line.
Thank you for your question. And that's a very, very good question. Well, for us, one of the best things to do is really to go on diplomatic offensive with the support of the regional states and the international community. Well, to condemn and probably make Xi Jinping realize that he is isolating himself because he's not adhering to the rule of law, or rather, he has a different interpretation of UNCLOS and the rule of law. Sometimes domestic laws becomes their international law, and that is not acceptable in the international community. That is why it is really very, very important that like-minded countries all over the world should join this call. It is the only way I think that Xi Jinping will listen because the world is speaking, and perhaps well, the domestics, the people of China are also listening because at the advent of today's technology, it's better to look at the internet online, and you cannot hide things from the Chinese people. So by having this united front and calling the or condemning these illegal aggressive acts, uh, will put Xi Jinping into his scent and probably uh, stop these harassment and coercive actions and start to cooperate and collaborate with the international community.
Oh, I think that in short, I think that because cooperation is the key, so I hope that we can have more conversation, not only among the top leaders, but also among scholars, among other stakeholders between China and other countries, including the Communist Party members. Thank you.
I think the behavior of China and the US is at a point where it's an action reaction cycle. And what I try to say to both my Chinese and American interlocutors is, frankly, from my observation, is that the capacity for mischief making of one is greatly overestimated by the other. There is no China lurking in every shadow. There is no America lurking in every shadow. Very happy to know that the meeting between President Trump and President Xi went very well. Hopefully, relations will be better. And once it does, reasonably optimistic for the time being that it will, then I suspect that the position of both the Chinese as well as the American leadership will calibrate, will be recalibrated, and hopefully things will get, the situation globally will get better as well. Thank you.
So I think that for Palau, we will continue to condemn these acts. We will continue to advocate for um, freedoms that we enjoy. Um, we're not close to partnerships with China, but if China's telling us we cannot be friends with somebody, then that's where we have to draw the line. So we want to be friends with everyone. But if one of our friends is telling us we can't be friends with somebody else, then that's where the problem is. So we will continue to call out the behavior, which is not just in the maritime domain, but also transnational organized crime in Palau with drug trafficking, online scamming, cyber attacks, which are all stemming from China. We will continue to fight against that and continue to condemn it.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, please. Please.
Hi, this is Ken, National Sensei University from Taiwan. We heard okay. And our PRC friend claimed that Taiwan is part of China. I fully disagree. The question I'm going to bother you, the question I'm going to ask is, do you think Taiwan should play a role or function in the stability to promote and facilitate this rules-based international order in South China Sea and the Pacific Ocean island region? Should Taiwan play a role? And what can Taiwan do? Help this international legal order. Lottie.
Fair question. Who would like to answer first? Secretary Anya?
Well,
Then Madam Anson.
certainly Taiwan has a role to play in these geopolitical issues and concern. And of course, even though we have one China policies, that will not restrict us from informally engaging with Taiwan because it is, well, you cannot separate security, national security, with economy. And we have an economic cooperation with Taiwan, and it is actually interconnected to national security. So for me, uh, Taiwan also being a core interest of China should have also a role to play in not only in South China Sea issues, but also in the Indo-Pacific.
I think that there's no reason why Taiwan shouldn't contribute to the South China Sea because, as I said, South China Sea and other seas are global commons. And we are having a lot of problems everywhere with the seas and oceans, from the classical issues to the non-traditional security issues. So every nation, every organization, everybody can contribute something to the global commons. And I remember that not only Vietnamese scholars, but also other scholars, we are enjoying a very good conversation with Taiwanese scholars, and Taiwanese businessmen are doing very well with a lot of other businessmen in other places. And so I believe that, and I hope that Taiwan continue to contribute not only to the South China Seas, but also to the seas and oceans around the world. Thank you.
Just like very many countries in the world, we have a one China policies. At the same time, we do have relations, economic relations with Taiwan, which is quite well known, which is very public as well. But given our position on the one China policies, my response is the role which Taiwan plays will have to be done within the context of that particular policy. Thank you.
Yes, so Taiwan has a role to play, and I believe it has been playing that role over the years, especially in the Pacific, and most especially in Palau, with support for Palau's economic development.
Thank you, Madam Anson. We now have to wrap up. I'm sorry to those who raised their hands. I want to give the opportunity. Short, take all of us, starting with Secretary.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the organizers of this Manila Dialogue and the participants from country, especially the academics, we thank, because we believe that you a very crucial role, particularly on fact-based transparency and providing, well, practical recommendations, wide perspective that could be of help to the people in the government, and probably put census also, so that future decision making will be always towards adherence to the rule of law. And of course, I'd like to thank also my co-panelists. This has been a very, very productive discussion, and we look forward to the next Manila Dialogue in the future, because it's just getting better. And I know, even just step by step, even just one small step at a time, I think we can attain that point that we will resolve all these issues through peaceful means and avoid any use of force, which is already taboo in the modern times. Thank you.
And thank you so much for a very fruitful discussion. And I understand a lot about the South China Sea and what we are doing here. And I think that we can also have a better mutual understanding, including perspective from different countries and stakeholders toward the South China Sea issue. And I think that why there are still so many issues, not only in the South China Sea but elsewhere, and we are still lacking a lot of mechanism to solve all of those issues, to build trust, and to achieve better cooperation. I think that it is our responsibility to enhance cooperation, regardless of being normative or positive. I think that whether we think that it is the international law that important, or the rule of law, or like we have to accept what we have to accept, it's not important. The more important thing is that we have to cooperate with each other more and more in order to progress, gradually or rapidly, and to achieve the stability and development in the region and for our nations.
Thank you. Obviously, my first instinct is to thank Secretary Anyo and the organizers of this conference. There was a conference on the South China Sea in Vietnam very recently. We are here in Manila, again on the South China Sea. In a couple of weeks, there's going to be another one in KL. In December, there's going to be another one in China. So if people are selling shares on conferences on the South China Sea, it's probably a good time to buy them, because it's certainly it's a growth industry. But to me, it's very important that we continue to dialogue. Obviously, we will disagree with one another in very many ways. But I think important thing is to agree to disagree, but agreeably. And you have all of these conferences, which I think is not duplication, but rather looking at this very complicated, complex issue from very many angles. So thank you very much.
I also want to thank the organizers of this particular roundtable and my fellow panelists, and say that it's such a privilege to have a voice at the table. Being such a small island, not even in the South China Sea, but being here and being able to share our challenges with each other and take lessons learned, and hopefully use that to be more proactive in on the other side of the Philippines. So I look forward to continuing the dialogue and holding you to your commitments for cooperation with Palau moving on into the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Anson. Let's give a big hand for all our speakers. Thank you so very much. The Honorable Secretary Anyo Dato Abidin, Honorable Anson, Ambassador Bin, thank you so much. Good night, everyone. There's heavy cocktails waiting for you outside. Heavy, the food. There will be some drinks, of course.
So I think